Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to the Dispatchers Roundtable. It is going to be round 47. This episode is sponsored by RapidSOS, Safer Together, the leading AI company in public safety. And a big shout out to everyone who shares, comments, just everything. It's been a couple months since we had round 46, and that was with Dawn Shumway. She was doing a session on zero suicide kits, and we just had a lot of stuff going on, especially with the public safety showcase over in the trenches community. But if you want to check out any of those, you can definitely go to that. Simply go to the link that is on the screen, that is links with 2eyes.co/IM911, and you'll find every single round with the Dispatchers Roundtable there. It'll be on the left under Training Hub, and then the Dispatchers Roundtable. And this round will be there as well. So make sure to check that out. I'm excited to be here with my guests today, and we are going to be covering the topic of QA and culture. That is quality assurance and culture, because there's a lot of things that go with it. I actually had a conversation earlier today in the trenches community with a few folks, and we were talking about how, if there's possibly a way that QA, if we can change our mindset for QA to be from, where folks sometimes feel like, oh, am I getting in trouble? And, it's almost the equivalent of sitting in class and over the intercom, you hear your name, please come to the principal's office. And you're like, oh no, everyone else is, ooh, what did you do? But what if we switch that mindset? Can we switch that mindset to something good that we've done, and also being proud of the work that we do? There's got to be a way. And that's some of the things that we're going to be talking about here in this conversation. So I want to bring my guests up one at a time so that they can give a little bit of background on themselves. And I want to start out first with my good friend, Matt Grogan. And I did look at the name because there's been probably once or twice that I've said his last name wrong. And the first time, I think, was on maybe a Dare to Be Great session. And I said Groban, which I apologized. But he called me out on it, and it was hilarious. So let me bring on screen my buddy Matt with the Denise Amberlee Foundation, and is the Director of Public Safety and Programs. What's up, man?
Hey, what's going on? I should have some Josh Groban music playing in the background. I had actually, not gonna lie, I forgot about that. So,
dude, I remember that was hilarious. I think you said something to the effect of, as much as I would like to be part of the family, it's a different name. I have it was something like that. It's Grogan. I was like, oh, my bad, dude.
Yeah, it's all good. I've had so many iterations of my name pronounced. I feel like it's not hard, but you know what? We learn in 911, sometimes the easy things become incredibly hard, and you know what? Talking's hard sometimes.
It is, so. Definitely. I'm excited to have you here, man. And before we bring our next panelist up, if you could, for those who are watching and listening who might not know who you are, which I don't know how they wouldn't, but if they do not, some background and summary on your public safety experience.
Yeah, no, and trust me, I'm just a little small potato here, so I'm not some big thing. My name's Matt Grogan. I am Director of Public Safety Programs and Partnerships at Denise Amberlee Foundation. It's a whole, you got to take a breath in the middle of that. So I've been in 911 for about 20 years or so. Let's see, let's good old Illinois math. Started in 2005, so I'm about 21 years now. So carry the one there.
Very nice.
Started at an agency in the western suburbs of Chicago called DuCom, or DuPage Public Safety Communications. We are a large, consolidated 911 center there, doing police, fire, and EMS. Very typical journey. Started as a call taker, went over to the fire side, cross trained over to police side. Very quickly went back to the fire side. Just police dispatching, man, is not my cup of tea. So all of you that do police dispatching, traffic stops or consistent vehicle pursuits, that's where it's at, my friend. Those are a good time. Foot pursuits, it depends on the officer. It just kind of. But it just let's burn down some houses, let's run some ambulance calls. Like that's my cup of tea, and that's been really my passion for 20 years. And I kind of ran the gambit there in Illinois, doing kind of every position there was. I kind of did that, but after 10 years, I was like, look, man, I need a new challenge. I also decided I did not nearly sweat enough in life. So let's go out west to Las Vegas, where it is a cool and balmy 111 degrees here today. So not too bad, not too shabby. And worked for Las Vegas Fire and Rescue. Definitely got my fair share of house fires and ambulance calls and everything in between. So departed from there in 2022 to join a company called RQI, or Resuscitation Quality Improvement, with the great Julie Buckingham, who's now with Avive. She brought me over to RQI to help with their TCPR program. But I've been teaching, and this is where, Ricardo, where you and I crossed paths in 2018, was after the Las Vegas shooting, and telling our story and being a part of everything that you've been working on since the very beginning. Appreciate everything that every opportunity you have afforded to me with everything that you're doing. So I really appreciate that. And came on full time with the foundation in 2024, and it's been a dream since to be a part of this recent growth and insurgence and all the new partnerships we got going on. One I'm really excited to talk about today, and just helping the community of dispatchers and 911 professionals get the best support that they can. So, and that started with you, my friend. So I appreciate that.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the kind words and everything, and I will not forget going out to Vegas and you picking me up and taking me to tour around where everything happened. And
Yeah.
talk about a just a somber moment, but also being able to go into your center and just see how everything works around there. The huge logo and everything that was there too. It was just amazing. So I will always be grateful to you for that. Thank you very much. So we move on. We move on to our next panelist, our next guest, and this gentleman I've known as well for, man, a long time. We've all known each other a long time, which is awesome. And we're gonna have an excellent conversation here. But our next panelist is Mr. Jameson Peavy House, and he is the Senior Vice President Public Safety over at RapidSOS.
Good evening,
evening.
sir. How are
Yes.
you? I think you just called us all old.
We all have I mean, looking at Matt, you and I have a little more gray in our beard. Right? I know.
Just behind my face.
More than
Yeah.
I care to acknowledge.
I meant
So.
to trim this and shave it completely off so you couldn't see it. But I'm happy to have you here as well,
Thanks, brother.
and a little background and everything from you too, please.
I'm probably the oldest one here. I think I started in public safety in '94, and then full time probably in '97. Dispatch, much like Matt as well, Ricardo. Dispatch. I worked my way through training and supervision, QA, and ultimately demoted down to director, which was great. Left that role at the county, went to work for the state of Tennessee for 3 years as our statewide training coordinator, and that was fantastic. And then there was some kind of hiccup called COVID. Worked through that for a little bit. In the middle of COVID, came to RapidSOS, and it has been an incredible journey. I get to serve here on the public safety team for 6,000 different individual comm centers, and it's been a roller coaster. Just amazing climbs. It's been huge. So I've been very, very blessed.
That is awesome, man. And you and I made contact as well early on during the movement the I Am 911 movement, which we have the
Yes, sir.
10-year anniversary coming up this Monday, which is crazy to think. So many different things going on. So again, we've all known each other for a while, cross paths in this profession of 911, and everyone just doing so many big and good, important, powerful things in each path that we've been on. And now we come together today for round 47 of the Dispatchers Roundtable. And we want to jump in to this topic of QA and culture. But first, I want to start out with Matt. And I want you to tell me, please, a little bit about the Denise Amber Lee Foundation, but also what this partnership means to everyone there at the foundation as a whole.
Yeah, so starting with the foundation, I mean, the foundation was created about 6 months after Denise's passing in 2008. Nathan originally started the foundation as a vehicle to help other victims of crime get attention, get resources, and just get the things that they need to help solve the crimes, help recover, just provide support. That was the original intention of the Denise Amber Lee Foundation. And then about a few years after that, he had received an invitation from California APCO to speak at their conference. And that was the first place that Nathan went and spoke to 911 professionals, because the story had aired on Dateline in 2020 and Dr. Phil, and had done the rounds of all the national level shows. And it was at that point in time, not really even Nathan, it was the industry realized that there was not only a story to tell, but a story to be taught and learned and to grow from. And so, I mean, since then, you want to talk about a big fish. It's very hard to not know the name Nathan Lee or Denise Amber Lee herself, whether that is in whether you attended one of our classes, one of our online trainings, if you've read it in a training manual or a program. It sits in a lot of different training manuals. But circling to the quality assurance, in 2015, the National Quality Assurance Standard was created in a joint effort between APCO, NENA, Priority Dispatch, a bunch of different entities, which made friends for a few days, and they all came together and created the standard. And in the foreword, Denise's story was mentioned as a reason for creating that standard. And somewhere in there, about that time, a person by the name of Michael Martin started RapidSOS, or started what they called the Haven app overall with RapidSOS. And Michael had reached out to Nathan because Nathan was starting to travel the country at this point in time, and the foundation was really picking up steam. And Michael Martin, in his original Kickstarter, he was creating a Kickstarter for $60,000 to get the Haven app off the ground, asked Nathan if he could tell Denise's story and use that as a vehicle for the creation of RapidSOS and the Haven app. And that was really where our partnership started. Fast forward to 2026, RapidSOS approached the foundation saying that they had a really neat tool, which we're going to talk about today, and asked if we would help them and help bring, one, best practices to this, and two, to initiate a culture change. You know, Ricardo, you kind of talked about it, a culture mindset shift about quality assurance. And that was the true vehicle of RapidSOS's desire for this partnership, was to not figure out the best AI, to not figure out all those things. Don't get me wrong, they have the best AI, but they were just about how can we make centers better and how can we do it through quality assurance. And we were really honored for them to reach out to us for that conversation. And the partnership means the world to us because we've really been there since the beginning for both. And so it's like we've been grown up friends together for a long time, and we're just, it keeps getting better.
You know, it's interesting how we have all come together as well, because I remember in 2013, my first National NENA conference where I was doing the podcast and working with everyone. About a week or so before that, or maybe a month, I don't know, something like that, My wife and I were watching Dateline, and they had re-aired Denise's
Mhm.
story, and I remember telling her, "I think he's going to be there at this conference that I'm gonna be at." And I was allowed to go in and sit. I sat right up in front, heard the entire story, and then asked if he would be on the podcast. Like, I still have a picture from that 2013 National Linux Conference where we met for that first time, and we had all been in contact. A couple years later, I end up having a sit down in DC at 911 Goes to Washington with Michael Martin, talking about Text 911 and so many other things that we were doing at that time. So it's interesting how we all kind of came together early on during that time as well. And so we shift over to Jameson, for yourself and speaking on behalf of Rapid SOS as well. What what does this partnership mean to the company?
That's easy, man. I think you're all the way around it. We have been the same industry. We've been kind of circling each other and finding weaving together because we all share a common mission. The three of us have sat in the seat. We know what it's like when the culture is terrible. We know what it's like when the culture is great. We understand hard days, and we understand that for the last 20 or 30 years, we really haven't had all the tools at our fingertips to, one, assist when we know something is occurring, but two, to even know it's occurring. There are so many times that our folks have been involved in calls and that have been traumatic for them. Management has no idea because we're, randomly selecting, one, two, three calls to do a QA for this person once a month or whatever it may be.
Mm.
I'm probably not even getting the one that matters. And so if culturally we're going to really start supporting public safety, specifically the butts in the chairs, then we have to be more holistic in the way we're viewing that so that we understand when things are becoming a burden or when we could do things better. And then we thought about this from a technology standpoint. For us at Rapid SOS, technology is simple. Relationships are paramount, but it's like, man, who helps us drive that culture? Because it can't just be a company. And it was Nathan. I was like, "Hey, Nathan, can I come down and see you? I want to show you something, man." And we sat in a room. Matt was there as well, and we locked ourselves in this little room for probably 3, 4, 5 hours and just whiteboarded. And it kept coming back to, how do we use this to change the culture? How do we do this to improve the workspace? How do we make sure that we're keeping telecommunicators on shift? And using tools to do that is a great way of solving some of those issues on the fly.
It's amazing. There's so many. Some of the parts that that Matt mentioned as well. I didn't know a lot of those things, so it's good to know this history. It's good to know the why behind everything. And now we're going to kind of jump into what this partnership is, but also how all of this kind of works as well. So going over to you, Matt, you've done QA in the past, but this is different. Even just listening to what you're saying right now, this is definitely different. So what part in this partnership does Delph play when it comes to QA? Like, are you guys, just as an example, are you guys doing the actual QAing of the calls, or are you doing something to the effect of, like, maybe even working with the dispatch centers, whether it be, the director, deputy director, supervisor, trainers, whichever, to actually assist in building the kind of like the scorecards? What exactly, how does this work?
We're working with agencies on a multitude of levels. What we're looking at, so Harmony does the reviews. So
Mhm.
Harmony has the ability to listen to the calls and provides a review of the call. What we are doing, and it's kind of a multifaceted approach, is we are, one, helping you build the scorecards to tell Harmony, hey, how do you review this call? How do you review the caller interrogation? How do you review a car accident? How do you do those things? And a lot of us that have worked in agencies that deal with things that are done via policy procedure, a good majority of police centers run that way. A lot of fire departments run that way, where the questions that you ask and the manner that you ask them and the order that you ask them are all in an old dusty 3-ring binder or a hard drive on a computer. And we're going to work with you to help you put that into the correct language into the Harmony product, so it has that ability to create the scorecards and review those calls. That's just one portion of it. The second portion of it is we're going to make sure that it's calibrated correctly so that once we put it into the system, we don't just go, okay, adios, see you later. Glad you installed it. We'll see you next year when you're ready to renew. That's not what it is. What we're there to do is to ensure that it's calibrated correctly. If you have a policy change and we need to make some updates, we can help guide you through those things. And three, most importantly, we're there to help you build your whole entire QA program, not just even the AI. We're looking at it, as Jameson mentioned, from a very holistic point of view, is we are helping you in how do you communicate feedback, how do you communicate that you're starting this kind of program, how do you communicate changes, how do you deliver, bad reviews, good reviews. We're going to talk about recognition in a little bit. Let's help you identify what good calls there are. And then one of the things that Jameson, I believe, is going to talk about is we're going to talk about wellness. And RapidSOS has a really great tool and scorecard when it comes to wellness, that it can help identify if a call taker maybe broke down in the middle of the call, is struggling with a call, hears them cry, or if they have to turn the call over to someone. A lot of those times where there may not be a whole lot of visibility, if you were only picking 1 to 2% of calls, like I may have come in, I've had a bad day, I may be talking to callers short, I just may be off my game, or there's those days where I'm really on top of my game. We're here to deliver all of that context for you. The whole big thing for us is deliver context. Because a lot of places they'll come in, they'll just turn on a tool and they'll say, adios, we'll see you at renewal time. That's when our journey is just starting. And we're going to be with you that entire time, which is incredibly important to us, which was really important to us when Jameson said we sat at that whiteboard. We said we need to be there on day one, and we need to be there through the entire life of the product, not just a certain term, not just a certain time. We want to make sure that the whole entire QA program is a success for every agency we work with.
Ricardo, Matt brought up a really good point, right?
Yeah.
And it's about, the program versus the process versus the people. And I think that Nathan and I have kind of coalesced around an example of going and look at a model home and you see it and it's beautiful, right? And there's flowers in a beautiful yard, and you go inside, there's furniture and paint and everything looks great. And then you go in the kitchen, and the realtor's making cookies for you, right? And you feel like, oh, I want this. And you sign the contract. And then you get your model home, quote unquote. There's no grass, there's no flowers, there's no driveway, there's no paint on the walls, there's no furniture, there's not even a stove to make cookies in. And so many people were coming across that when they were partnering with different people. And so we took that same thought process and said, okay, the structure, the blueprint, the building itself, that is Harmony. That's the program part of this. If you look at the furniture, I may have the same furniture in my house that Matt does, but it's going to look different because I'm going to move it around. I'm going to adjust the way I see fit. That's the scorecards, right? But it's the cookies aspect that make it from house to home. That makes it mine. And you think about what Denise Everly brings to the table. Stacy had a great question here. How lengthy is the setup process? As soon as we turn audio on, we are QAing the next call. Typically, we're doing this in about 2 days. It's access to audio is all we need. We start QAing those calls, and that first week, Matt's reaching out to you, say, hey, what can we do to help you out this process? What are your top 5 or 10 call types you want to work with? Let's start working together. And they work with you for the life of the contract, not for a week, not for a month, but the life of your contract. They are there with you. And that is huge. He talks about calibration. I didn't really understand it very well, to be honest with you. But when you teach Harmony, I want you to understand an accident with injury, not just to check a scorecard or to look at some Excel document I upload, but understand what's going on in that process. We were seeing some scores on accidents that were tanking. We're like, what's going on here? And it was Matt and Nathan were like, because you can't interrogate an Apple Watch. And if Apple Watch is reporting the accident, you're going to tank the scores because you can't interrogate the caller. Oh, well, Harmony, here's an example of 5 Apple Watch profiles that have hit this agency. Help me understand what I need to be doing to grade these better so I don't ding the telecommunicator in this process. Harmony looks at it for about 15 seconds, says, yeah, let's do it this way. And it's incredible. Like this world has changed so fast, and now we can do it at scale, but also at depth.
So You kind of answered one of the questions that I was going to ask next, which is good because as I mentioned right in the beginning before we got into this conversation is that earlier today in the trenches community I had a conversation with a few people, and one of the things that was brought up was what all it can detect. So this was the scenario that we were talking about, and the scenario was that, what if there's someone who has been having, let's just say, a hard month, right? And maybe a little bit going into that month. Well, it's not that the person isn't, a great 911 professional. There's just things that have been going on that, whatever happens, right? The things that have been going on that maybe the scores are being low. So is it possible for the service to detect where someone is simply off versus like being just verbally bad to someone, or their performance is just bad in general, someone that's talking to someone that you really wouldn't want them to, or they're just maybe missing questions or whatever. Is there a distinction between that? Because sometimes people do get let go, right? Because
Sure.
they're not doing the best work. Sometimes QA goes into that as well to determine whether they move on, or what if they're just off.
Yep.
Is that possible?
Yes, sir. So let's take it a couple of contexts really quickly.
Hmm.
I'm selecting 3 random calls for this person today. Happenstance, all 3 are great. But I missed something that happened the next week. I don't catch it for 30 days. So how can I help that person? I can't. So if you think about caller interrogation, and I'm going to flip this coin around just a minute, but caller interrogation using repetitive persistence to ensure that the caller is, if they're distraught, if they're rambling, they're doing run-on sentences, did we use effective means to bring them back? And there's a whole list of things that we can go into there. We realize, like, if we can detect that with a caller and be able to say, we did a great job bringing them back to focus, getting the correct information, we can turn that coin around and say, hey, was there anything in the telecommunicator's voice where did they start stuttering? Did they get emotional? Did they ask for somebody to take over? Was there a moment where they were crying or their voice really turned shaky for an extended period of time? If so, highlight that call. Don't grade it. Highlight it to the QA staff and say, hey, Jameson had a pretty rough call here. And then I'm just going to turn around and sort by Jameson's name. How many of these calls that are rougher but Jameson's? Shoot, 7 this week. Like, hey, what's going on with him? Let's make sure we're checking in. And so I'll be able to do that. Now, I'll tell you, like, it's kind of incredible to watch. And we want to be very careful as a company because, like, I don't want to grade, are you having a hard time? What I want to do is notify admin, you might want to check on Jameson. Maybe these are
Yeah.
false positive, but we want you to check on him. Go ahead.
And I think that was a really important thing when, especially for myself, when I started looking at that, there were a couple things. I love the fact that it's not graded, so to say. There's no score that's attached to it. There's nothing like that. So it's not saying you got a 5%, on the wellness scorecard. It just it empowers your supervisors, your QA coordinators, your people to take a look and to really be invested in the mental well-being of your call takers. And as Ryan mentioned in the chat there, it's so often that those calls get missed. And that's really the important thing, is instead of it being relying on the QA that may happen 1 to 2 weeks later, if you're in a really proactive center, versus maybe 4, 5, 6, 7 months later, or you're relying on someone to say, hey, I had a tough call, which is a very small percentage of us. I don't think in my 20 years of dispatching I've ever acknowledged I've had a tough call outwardly without having been prompted about something.
Yeah.
It allows us to look at trends. It allows us to look at overall just having that data available. And I think another portion of it is it, and Jameson can correct me, is it looks at it from a singular call aspect. It's not just if it's suicidals or mental health or the child CPR calls or any of those kinds of things. It looks at all of those kinds of things. It's not call type specific, because I know I've worked with people, like for me, child related calls were not particularly tough for me. Okay. Whether it's because I don't have kids or I don't know, like I could work my way through a difficult child call. Get a dog that's injured, and I'm going to be a puddle in the parking lot later. Okay. That's where mental health is so individualistic that it is very important to have this wide swath of data for us that we can look at all those kinds of things. And the last part is, and this is the part that Jameson can correct me on, is it's not developing a profile for you. It's not developing like a profile for Ricardo where like Jarvis is going to be in there and be like, he's having a tough call, get him off the floor. Okay. Sorry, Jameson. If Kit was listening to Ricardo and
wow, there goes a joke of my age.
Hello, Michael.
No, I had to throw it. It's just about picking up some individualities of each call and empowering your supervisors to say, hey, one, listen to this. You should actually listen to this, verify it. Maybe it was just something that was off, or maybe, hey, I need to go talk to Ricardo. We need to have a conversation. I need to give him a moment to take a breather, to take a walk, to go practice some self-care. And it's incredibly important, as Ryan said, that it empowers us to break that stigma of it's okay to not be okay.
And I love this because this is literally years and years uh far ahead of what I was doing at the last center that I was at. I mean, I was out of there in 2013, but basically what we were doing was once a month you chose one emergency and one non-emergency for each person on your team, and then supervisors, we did that for each other, and that was it. I mean, it was a piece of paper. We had, I think it was maybe 2 pages, 2 or 3 pages, something like that, and we went through all the scoring, listening. Did they ask for the address right away? Yes. Okay, that's 100 points. Did they get a phone number right away? No. Okay, that's minus 100 points. And then you're like, okay. But then, you would have other people who would maybe sometimes get a lower score, and they would question it and say, well, can I sit with you and listen to it? Like, yeah, of course. Let's go listen to, if we had time, of course, right? While on duty. But, that's the way you did it. And it was once a month, and it was just 2 calls, just one emergency and one non-emergency. And all of this that you're saying is, and you know what? Some of those that were hard calls, they would slip through the cracks.
Yeah.
What I mean by that is in the sense of, we wouldn't know that someone had unless they said something, kind of like you were saying, Matt, because we don't acknowledge it, right? Unless someone is there and says something for us or brings it up, or maybe an officer brings it up, we might not know what happened until a month or so later when they're now struggling. And it's like, why didn't you say something? Well, I wasn't going to. I didn't want anybody to think that I was a problem, or, as we're talking about
Yeah.
this stigma. Now, Jameson, as we're looking at this as well, the next question that I have is, because of how we're talking about this and the amount of QAing that can be done. There's talk about 100% of the calls. Now, one of the questions that someone had asked me once was, is that something that, when you're working with and Matt, maybe you can talk about this too, but is it something that with the director and their team that you decide how many are being done, a month, or however you set it up, or is that just set in stone? They're all done. How is that
Let's
part working out?
let's talk about that for just a moment, and let's talk about a little bit of change of mentality about QA, right? Because you just
Sure.
gave a great story, Ricardo. And I have one question for you. You knew that day was coming on the calendar. Did you look forward to it?
No. And that was two things. One, because we would always be so super busy that I would lose track in the calls for specific people, looking in our in-house computer and all of our databases for certain calls, and then choosing one by reading the narrative. But sometimes the narrative and the audio is different. So then you have to go and choose another one. So there was a little bit of that as well. But for myself personally, it was kind of like I said in the beginning of it, sometimes it felt like, well, it's time to go to the principal's office and see what, what happens. I knew I was doing a good job, but it was just that fear of,
Mhm.
what if I thought I was doing a good job, but the piece of paper and everything that's there and my score doesn't match what I thought I was doing?
Okay. So in that context, I'll tell you how we look at 100% call volume.
Mhm,
And 100% sounds crazy scary, right? It's
mhm,
like, oh my, I don't have time to review all this. And you're not, the intent is not for you to review every single call. That's why Harmony is there. But there are three things that we look at for every call. So one is how to treat the caller, right? That's caller interrogation, et cetera. Two is, do we follow policy, procedure, protocol, whatever that may be for that specific incident. And three is, are people okay? And so for every call, you can have all three of those simultaneously, or you can say, hey, if it's an alarm call, I don't want to QA an alarm call. And it might just spit out the fact that, hey, this is an alarm call, no QA done. You can set that as the scorecard. But my question becomes, what calls do you not want to QA? Because in this world, we got a mindset, right? In public safety, like we haven't really been, I'm going to say something very, it gets me in trouble, but I'm going to say because it's true. We haven't been doing quality assurance. We've been doing compliance assurance. Did we follow this policy? A, B, C, D, check you off. Nope, you did not minus 10 points. That's compliance.
mhm.
So there are a lot of reasons why we have compliance. And I'm not saying compliance is bad, but our idea and our thought process for the future public safety is get your 2% compliance, but in the 100% cultural aspect. Maybe I still want to do a deep dive on every cardiac incident. Absolutely. Drop down, select cardiac incident, spit me out the report for this person, this shift, this month, random calls, whatever you want. And that report tells me everything I need to know about, are we doing policy, procedure, et cetera, by person or by agency. But really overall, how are we doing in overall call volume? Like what is our daily, like logging into an account for an agency and like it's 2 in the afternoon. Oh, today we're at 93.7%. Like that as soon as you log in for that specific day. So we definitely push folks to QA every call. How you QA those calls and the depth you QA on that incident type can vary.
And that's where we really come
Excellent.
in is when we sit down, when I sit down with the teams at the center, and the team is up to the agency to decide if it's generally anyone you want to be involved in your QA program, whether that's your director, your QA coordinator, your trainers, your supervisors. We will sit down with you and we're going to ask you a few real quick upcode questions. One, what does your QA program look like today? Two, what defines success for you? And three, what do you want to look at? Like, what do you want to get out of these reviews? And that's where we're going to help you hone in. I want to look at how we're performing on X type of call, or I want to look at our wellness, or I really want to look at caller interrogation. And that's where we're going to work with you through that journey to figure out what is going to best fit your center. Because, and then, we can provide you some best practice standards, we can provide you some advice, those kinds of things. But we're not trying to put the Delph mindset into your center because where you worked, Ricardo, you guys did it one way, where Jameson's worked, they've done it their way. Where I worked in Chicago and Vegas, we did things vastly different. So we're not trying to fit all of these things into one spot. We're trying to make sure that the QA program works for your agency and what you're looking for it to be successful. Because that's a big question for me is what equals success for you? And that's where a lot of what Jameson's talking about is I'm not asking you what equals compliance. What equals did you go from question 1 to question 2 to question 3 to question 4? Did you shunt to this car? Did you give your post dispatch instructions and your pre arrivals? Don't get me wrong. You have to look at those things. All right. That's why we say, hey, let's look at 1 to 2% of compliance. Let's stay within the standard. Let's do those kinds of things. But let's also look how we're performing overall on calls. And that's just, it's a vastly different mindset change.
And that you answered also a question that I was going to come to when we're talking about the quality of standards. You answered that. Is it because that was going to be part of the question? Is it the quality of standards of the Denise Amber Lee Foundation? Is it the industry, or is it the specific agency? And also, basically, what it's kind of like the turnaround times for QA, and is it all disciplines? or are there certain ones? And you guys kind of answered that, portion as well.
On
The
day
answer,
one, I'll take the first day, Matt, and I'll give you the second day. So day one, the compliance around QA is specific to that first call is the standards for NEED and APCO. The amalgamated standards of NEED and APCO, how we do caller interrogation, et cetera. When you talk to Matt on day two, it's like, okay, what are your guidelines? What's your solution set? So go ahead, Matt.
yeah, no, and so a couple different answers there. One, the answer is yes to all of it.
Yeah.
So, like Jameson said, day one, you get 2 scorecards. You get the NENA APCO standard that was just updated in 2025. They've updated their scorecard to match that standard, which Dalf was part of the creation back in 2015. It was actually one of our board members, Cheryl Ornberg, still board member today. It was her forms that she donated to APCO and NENA that became the baseline set of forms that every agency has access to still today, and that still live in the 2025 updated standard. Those were her original forms. And so you have the ability to score against that right away. We can work with you if that's what you want to do, that we can modify that to be how your center operates. All right. Because we work with, and I know Jameson and I have had a lot of questions about this, speaking about calibration. Maybe you don't ask for phone numbers anymore because we're getting phone number inputs from so many different areas, whether it's Annie, whether it's your mapping, your CAD, or more importantly, RapidSOS. You have a way to visually verify it. We're not asking those questions anymore. So when we're seeing those scores get a little bit lower, we're going to take a look at it from a foundation standpoint and say, hey, you are getting lower scores because you're not asking for phone number. One, do you want to, as Jameson talks about, do you want to put it on the whiteboard? We need to ask for phone numbers. Or do you want to adjust your policy? Or do you want to do something different? And that's where we're going to be with you in this entire journey. The third part of that is the reviews. It's no longer weeks. It's no longer even days. It's 90 seconds. It's 90-second turnarounds on those QAs. So from the time you hang up that call, Harmony also doesn't start reviewing the call until it's completely done. And this is a thing that is so mind-blowing for me, is instead of it reviewing it like line by line, word by word, it waits till the call's done and takes the whole call into context. And then it starts reviewing it. So if something is said at the end, it can put it into context into the beginning and realize, oh, this is actually a traffic accident because it mentioned T-bone there at the end. Now this whole thing makes sense. And so that is a really important part, that no longer is it days, weeks, months, whatever. It's 90-second turnarounds. And to have that data, like Jameson said, you can log in today and say, all right, where I'm at, it's 4:45 p.m. Let's see how you've been doing for today. You have a full swath of data available for you for how your center is performing that day.
We encourage agencies like, take your QA, take your trainers, take your staff, your admin staff, divide your team up and say everybody gets 3 people. Every 2 or 3 days, log in the QA platform, find 2 or 3 calls by that person, shoot them a text off shift. Hey, that call you took last night at 2 a.m., cardiac arrest, great job coaching that wife through CPR instructions. Really amazing work. Appreciate you so much. That's the cultural shift. And that's probably the one thing that we have to work on the most, is getting out of the old school mindset of like QA, compliance, et cetera, and saying, if I devote 5 minutes of my morning to picking a random call from a person on my list and shooting them a text, that culture changes overnight. And we just got to stick to it. And that now I'm a telecommunicator. Like, I get positive feedback 2 hours after I left the shift on something I took at 4 a.m. or 2 a.m. or whatever else. You see me, you hear me. I want some more of that. And basically now we've got a TC saying, tell me more. How can I do better? Because I like getting this direct feedback. Nathan brings up, the project retains from APCO. One of the top reasons for people leaving the industry is not money. It's actually being held accountable or accountability of others. And now you can do it on the fly.
I think the other important part that is really great about Harmony, and I loved when Jameson showed me this, is I was a product in my beginning days of a recipient of QA reviews was good job. That was it. That's all it said. Good job. And that's all we would look for is good job. And when you go into Harmony and you look at it, not only does it give you a score, does it give you all that kind of stuff, it gives you very specific feedback where it can tell you that Ricardo, as a call taker, you were super empathetic because at 1 minute and 27 seconds, you said, I understand this is a tough situation. We have help on the way for you. I am here to help you. And it will list out specifically what you said that was an empathetic statement. And that's where you can, again, take that culture change, as Jameson was talking about, to go, hey, you had a really tough call. That caller was going through a really great, really tough situation. And you, Ricardo, you were really empathetic with her. You told her that this was a tough call and that you were really having a rough day. You understood what was going on, but you were going to be there throughout the entire journey with her. And you can give that very actionable, specific feedback, because long gone are the days of when we should just be saying good job, or at worst, see me, which we all hated. And it allows you to have some actionable feedback.
See, and all of this is amazing. This is why I wanted to be able to do this, to explain more and talk about this in depth, because there were so many different questions and everything. And you guys kind of answered this already. One of the other questions was going to say, what are the benefits of this? Does it identify trends, patterns? Is it more, consistent or objective? And you guys kind of answered that already as it is. I want to move back up here really quick on the chat, because Amy had mentioned something, and she just says, what is the best way to make collaborations a larger part of the QA process? It sometimes can be very subjective as to if they asked all, most, or some of the necessary questions.
Yeah, I can, Jameson, I'm going to take this if that's all right. I'm going to look at it in two different lights when we talk about calibrations, because this, again, gets into the advent of AI and the transition from subjectivity to objectivity, which is what AI is bringing a lot of accessibility to. When it comes, if you're still doing human reviews, and we still encourage people to have a portion of human reviews still being done for a multitude of different reasons, just even on a smaller portion. When you look at calibrations, the way that we work with calibrations is, especially if you have more than one reviewer, is to all assign them. We encourage 10 calls, but at least a handful of calls have. So, like me as a QA coordinator, Jameson and Ricardo, you're on the QA team. I'm going to take one call. Jameson, you're going to take that same call. Ricardo, you're going to take that same call. And all three of us are going to review that one call. And then we're going to come together and we're going to sit in a room and we're going to chat face to face and say, here's my review, here's your review, and here's Jameson's review. Where are we the same? Or more importantly, where are we different? And if Ricardo, you have a different answer than Jameson, and Jameson and I are the same, Jameson and I are going to be like, Ricardo, where's the difference? Maybe we're wrong and maybe you're right. Maybe we have to pull out the policy book and say, hey, what's the policy? And we're going to do that over and over and over again till we're all on the same page. And there are many times we work with agencies that calibrations can take 4, 5, 6 different rounds. So where we're queuing nearly 100 calls to all get on the same page. And we encourage that to, 1, do that quarterly, 2, do it after policy changes, or 3, just because you feel like it. Now, when it comes to the AI portion and calibration, which Jameson mentioned, is we're going to input those scorecards for you. The Harmony is going to start reviewing it. Then we're going to ensure it's reviewing it correctly. So we may take 10 calls. We may implore you as an agency to, hey, listen to this, make sure it's scoring correctly. You're getting the output that is desired. Or 2, we may do it at your request on our side. Hey, can you listen to a call or two? Is this reviewing it correctly? And saying, hey, yes, this is calibrated correctly. And we're getting pure objective responses out of the AI versus subjective responses for human review, which is a challenge, but it also doesn't mean that is something that should be completely lost.
Man, this already has been an excellent one, and we still have a little bit more to cover here before we wrap up this round. Now, I want to clarify something from what I'm hearing, and maybe others that are watching and listening as well. Now, you mentioned, if we look at this from a culture standpoint, okay, and you had mentioned that, when it's being QA'd at certain time or whatever, it's actually kind of calling out, bringing a little bit more recognition to, let's say, the decision making, the way things were said, maybe even tone or whichever. So I guess what I'm getting at is, like, QA becomes more about the good being done during the call than someone getting into trouble for something.
Yeah. So
Pretty
if
much.
you, yes, sir. If you look at this from a standpoint of like an individual person, I can still run a report for Jameson, give you a random selection of 50 calls in the last 90 days, spit out a report, tell me where we're doing great at. And what it will do in that 50 calls, it'll say, hey, 47 out of 50 calls, Jameson did a fantastic job with empathy. There were 3 calls here that it wasn't, but because we had to use repetitive persistence with this caller because they were extremely emotional, we understand why that was not followed. Right. And so there's keys to that. And then you run as an agency wide. Well, now as a leader, I've got stats I can just run from every single day and go to my board meeting and be like, hey, in the last 30 days, 99% of the time, we verify callback number within the first, 15, 20 seconds of the call. Whatever it is that you want to pull out, it's all there. You don't have to run an Excel spreadsheet and then spit out some graph and try to figure it all out. You just run it and then it's available to you. And so now I can focus on individuals who I maybe need to calibrate, a little bit with them to make sure they're getting the right things.
Mhm.
I can see that broad aspect of my entire organization. These are the things that we're consistently missing that we need to train on and adapt to. And then I can say, and these are the findings of our agency that we want to share with the outside world. Like, how do we handle empathy? We ran one of the reports that we ran for an agency. It came back and said, 12% of your calls are hysterical callers. Man, if I take that by the number of calls and I tell my outside folks, do you realize like over 13,000 times a year, we're dealing with hysterical callers and helping them calm down during the most important moment in their life. And that's the job we do. And just walk off stage because now the agency or the public understands what we're doing as an agency.
Yeah, and I think that's so incredibly important. One, to have that outward visibility of what we are doing in very often closed circumstances. Because, I mean, when Nathan and I travel across the country and we talk to people that aren't in dispatch, most of us think we're all in some one large building controlling the whole entire country, and that's where 911 is, in some mysterious bunker base somewhere. But that's, from an outside perspective, the more data and the more context you can give out to public officials and to just the general public, one is better. But to go like back to what like Stacy and Ryan and everything we're talking about, having that actionable feedback, and that's part of what we're going to provide as our services with DELF and this partnership, is we're going to work with you to say, hey, this might be a way to deliver some of this feedback to your people. As Jameson mentioned, hey, split up your supervisory staff, each take a particular team of people, every shift when they log in as part of those initial duties, pick out a few calls, read the reviews, and then just deliver some of that feedback right away. And it's, instead of it being weeks later, it's within 24 to 48 hours, or maybe within even a minute or two. And you can say, hey, man, really great job on that call. Really empathetic. You provided great customer service. You have that ability to cement behaviors right then, as opposed to waiting several weeks later to when that behavior is already cemented and maybe you need to correct it. And so we can work with you in providing the style that works for your agency. Again, not having a cookie cutter response. We're going to say, hey, what does success mean to you?
That is perfect because, thinking about this in a way of even normalizing coaching and continued improvement, where it can turn into something where getting feedback regularly now ends up being not that, it's someone that is doing something wrong. It becomes a normal part of the job. And again, instead of something that employees dread, now it can be looked at as more as improvement, but also as a way to share examples, share stories, and to continue the build up of what people are doing good versus the other side.
Yeah, I agree. It's training in the moment and in the meeting. You can have it both.
Yeah, and I'm getting ready to do a virtual presentation tomorrow, and one of my slides I typed something that I came up with randomly, and it's QA is a mirror, it's not the enemy, and this is an opportunity for us to look at how we're performing, and we need, that goes back to what Jameson's talking about from a messaging standpoint. Is we're we're looking at compliance. Don't get me wrong. We need to look at compliance. We need to look at performance, but we also just need to look at how are we culturally, and what we do inside our centers in between each other, it will spill into our callers. It is hard for it not to. We don't have that magic on and off switch. And this gives us that ability to look into the mirror, to coach behaviors, to enforce behaviors that we want, to have accountability. And most importantly, circling back to what Jameson was talking about, is to have the best people sitting next to you that will serve the callers and the responders as best as possible. That accountability is coming back in full force with products like this.
Perfect. Now, as we go into the wrap up, we've got just a few minutes left here of this round. I just want to ask, again, amazing information. Thank you both so much for coming on and sharing this for everyone to hear. We had this engagement and everything going on. One of the last things that I want to ask, other than how can people reach out to you to find out more about everything that you're doing with the partnership and the QA process, culture, all of the above, but where do you see this going, like, beyond everything that you're talking about now? Is there a possibility that, hey, maybe there's a QA excellence, type recognition that could potentially come out of this? I know you can't say everything, but you never know. It could be something beyond everything that's just awesome that you guys have said already. So either one of you.
I'll tell you what I hope comes out of this. And I'm going to be very blunt, Ricardo.
Mm-hmm.
I hope the next NINA or APCO that we're at in the state, somebody walks up and says, I stay because your QA program made our place a better place to work. That's success for me.
I love that. What about you, Matt?
For me, I will be blunt also, but in a completely different direction. We see no more Denises happening because of things like this. And that's our goal. And that's why it was important for us to partner with someone who sees the same way, and that we will prevent the next Denise. We will try and prevent the next Kyle Plush, the next Carrie Hunt, the next named person that shouldn't have been named. But because we let things go for too long, here we are again. And it's time we get to work. And this is the beginning of that work starting.
Amazing. Thank you both for being on and sharing all of this information. And for anyone who wants to learn more or book a demo or anything like that, either one of you, where can people go to find out more information?
It's all common spelling, jpvhouse at rapidsos.com. Or to make it super simple, it's EEM at rapidsos.com.
Perfect. All right. Matt, how about you?
I'm nice and simple too. Matt, MATT at DeniseAmberlee.org. So you can reach out to us. You can go to our website, DeniseAmberlee.org. We'll have all the links, and we'll have a lot of stuff coming out with our partnership very, very soon, which will be very accessible to everyone. So stay tuned for those things.
All right, perfect. And for any other information for RapidSOS as well, you can go to rapidsos.com. You can follow them on social media. You can follow the Denise Amberlee Foundation on social media as well. For anyone, if you have any comments, questions, you can simply go to links. That's links with 2i's.co/IM911. My email is there. Social media, everything available for you to follow. This can be seen on Facebook, YouTube, X, as well as Instagram and LinkedIn Live. And then you can watch this 24/7 on any one of those platforms, but also the Trenches community, where every single round is found there. And you can also listen and watch withinthetrenches.net and find all of this information there. Thank you both once again for everything. This episode has also been sponsored by RapidSOS, Safer Together, the leader in AI and public safety. Thank you all very much for joining us, and we will see you all in the next one. Have a good night, everyone.
See y'all.
All right.